Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I am Andres Villalba, I am a sales engineer at Sencha, and today we're going to be talking about how to build customized JavaScript charts using Ext JS. With Ext JS we can create quite a few different charts. We have several components at our disposal, and we can create anything from column, bar, and line charts to pie, donuts, to radars, to box plots, to financial charts, and others. I invite you to visit our kitchen sink. You can just Google kitchen sink and Sencha, and it will take you to this site down here. Also, we're gonna be building some simple examples at first, and then we will move on to this dashboard over here. We are not going to start from scratch. If you don't know how to create a basic application, I invite you to go into our YouTube channel and look at our other videos where we go into detail on how to create applications. Just take in mind that I created a classic application on our most basic template, and it will look something like this. It usually comes with four sections on the left side and has some basic information. I already built this application where we have this dashboard based on sales information. We have leads, we have hot leads, warm leads, we have closed deals, we have the best sales representative here according to the leads they have. We have software ratings, we have the best selling software, and we also have sales information for each sales representative. We added some filters here. So instead of looking at everybody, we're looking at other sales representatives, we're looking at partners, we're looking at our sales team, or we can go back to show everyone. And we also added a button to show the chart in a bigger window. Last, we have downloads for the last 12 months. What do we have here? How does Sencha work? Well, by default, it adds a lot of interactivity. So I can go in and just make some parts visible or hidden. I can rotate this kind of charts. It makes it a lot easier to see. I also did that over here. Let's say here that we have a lot of information. Let's just take out a few charts from there. Now we're looking at some other software. Okay, same deal here. So I can just go in and hide a few, and this is how it would look. Notice that we have some tooltips there. Everything here that you see at the bottom are charts. These are not. These are UX components. And of course, this is our powerful grid at the right. We will be creating a basic chart first. Then we will be moving to a second one. Then I'm going to show you how to use layouts. And then I'm going to go in and show you a little bit more about how the dashboard works. So before we start, we have to make sure that we have included charts and UX in our application. So if you build the application like I said, by using the Sencha command and just building a basic classic application, all we have to do is go into our project, look for the app.json file. So look for the requires array. So you just go in and add charts and add UX. After you have done this, just go to the terminal window or a command line window, and basically just rebuild your application and refresh it. So all you have to do is type this, hit enter. It'll take a few minutes, and then go into your terminal again and just say rebuild development. Of course, if this is going to production, I would instead just go and say production. Okay, I'm not gonna do it right now. I have already done it. As a quick overview, whenever we add options to our simple application, what we do is we go into our main file inside the app view main folder. We go all the way down into the items array, and here we can add new options. Let's just say example. Let's take it out. Let's go ahead and work on our first chart. I have already created the file. However, we're gonna go in and actually update it. Okay, now that we know what we have to do before we start, let's check a few more things. Our data, we can fake it and put it directly on the front end, or maybe just have a JSON file and load it from there. That's not what we are going to be doing here. What we're doing is loading data from an endpoint that gets the data from a database. Whenever we do this, the best way to do it is to retrieve the data in a JSON format. Basically, we will have a data array with our list of results. We're going to have a success property that is going to say true if everything is correct, an account property that it's going to tell us how many registers we brought from the backend. So what I created is basically this Cafe app view charts first chart, which is saved here. Cafe app is the name of my application. View charts is the folders. And then first chart is the file that I created. To make it a little bit easier, I have already defined the class. So basically this has to match the folder. App view charts, first chart. We need to extend from anything. In this case, I'm extending from a panel. We have to give it an Ext type. In this case, I'm calling it first chart. And this Ext type is the one that I'm going to be using in the main file to actually create the chart, which is here. And the name of the class is the one that I used over here. So we need both. And now I'm going to be creating the actual contents of this file. Let's just give it a title. Let's call it first chart. I'm going to give it a layout. In this case, I'm just going to call it fit. So let's go ahead and create everything else we need. So items, it's an array. And inside of it, I'm going to create the polar chart. We need this X type. This is going to say that polar coordinates. If I am creating a column chart or a bar chart, I would use Cartesian instead. We need a reference. Just going to call it chart. We need to connect to the store. So that store, we haven't talked about it, but I have to specify it as store type, and it's called sales rep sales. And here I have to include the actual class name. So cafe app store. Okay, this way I am loading the store, and here I am linking it. So apart from that, what I need is to create the actual series. So let's put it this way: the polar X type is creating the container for this chart. The series is creating all the charts inside this actual container. So here, this is what I specified, that this is going to be a pie chart. Okay. I also have to specify which is the angle field. I know because I created this example that it's subtotal, but it could be anything else that comes from the backend. And I'm also going to specify the label field. However, this time I'm just going to say it this way: label field, and it's called name. And I'm going to put display outside so that it shows outside each element, each slice. As you can see, we have our chart here. Kind of ugly, but it's there. And there are some values that we cannot not actually see. So what else should we do? Well, if we want to make it look a little bit better, we can use a theme. To be a little bit faster, I'm copying and pasting from another example. So I'm adding a new theme. I need to require it, and then inside the polar property, I'm just gonna add theme blue. I'm gonna add an inset padding so that we have some extra space around the chart and those titles do not disappear. Then I'm gonna add two interactions. One will be the rotate interaction and the other one will be the item highlight. But to make the highlight actually work inside the series, I have to specify what's gonna happen. With the highlight, there's gonna be a margin of 40 pixels. So now we have some extra space at the end. We can rotate the chart, and whenever I put my mouse over a slice, it moves. However, as you can see, it's hard to tell what's going on, what values we have. So what I'm gonna do next is create a tooltip. I have to say track mouse and just call it true. And also I have to add a renderer, which this is the one that it's gonna be calling the actual tooltip. I can put whatever I want in here. The only idea is to just say tooltip set HTML, and I can say just hello if I wanted to. So now each tab here, each slice here is gonna say hello. But if I want something a little bit more detailed, I have already created something else. And what this is doing, it's getting the name from the actual record, and it's getting the subtitle from it. So those two values come from the backend. And instead of just putting it HTML hello, I'm gonna put the message there. And also take in mind this is HTML, so if it was looking way too small, I can add some code here and make it look a little bit better. So let's say I just wanted to add a div there and say style and say font size 14 pixels. So I will just go into the series, and apart from angle, I'm just gonna say radius field. I'm just gonna call it quantity. Alright, I just noticed I had a typo. Let's go ahead and test it. And as you can see, now it changes on both directions. Okay, so this is just a simple example. Let's go in and create the second chart. Okay, so this is just a simple example. Before we go on, let's take a look at the store. So what I was calling here is sales rep sales, which basically it's this store over here. Store, the way it works, it has to extend from Ext JS store. Then we have to give it an alias. We can specify a model if we want to. If we don't have one, we can just ignore it for now. What I'm doing here is I'm using auto load to make sure that as soon as the store is created, it loads the data from the backend. If I take that out, I have to actually call the store.load to make it load the data. And page size is used for grids so that we can load information with paging instead of bringing everything from the backend in one go. And then we specify a proxy. It could be a REST proxy, it could be an Ajax, or whatever we need that it's available here in Next.js. And then the URL, right now I have it in the same server, but if it was in a different server, I could specify what that was. And I'm also telling the reader that everything is going to come from JSON format, and it's also going to be saved inside the data property. And that's it. That's how it works. How do I load it? If we go back to my first chart, as you saw, I have to require that store, and then I have to use the alias inside the store type. And that's it. That's all we need. Now, like I was saying, let's move to the next part. This time around, I have created the basic part too. So basically, this is the name of my class. It extends from the same panel. This time the X type is just a bar chart. I'm gonna load the store data from this store over here. And then I'm gonna put a title and also a layout fit, just like we did. So it's basically the same idea. And what's next is the same thing too. So I'm just gonna create one item. And instead of being a polar container, this is gonna be a Cartesian one. It also needs a reference. So I'm just gonna call it chart it needs the store. So as you can see, this is the exact same thing. And then in this case, I have to specify the access and the serial and the series. So here the access are inside an array, and I need to specify the type of each one. So I'm gonna add a numeric access. I'm gonna tell it that it's located on the left of my chart. I want to see the grid lines. That's why I add grid through. I'm gonna give it a name. We'll just call it sales. And then I'm gonna create the other axis, which is this time it contains the category, and it's gonna be at the bottom. Okay, we're almost done with the basic part. The next one, just like last time, is to create the actual series. So the series it's also an array. This time it is a bar. And we have to specify also an X field, a Y field, and in case we have several different values, we also need a title field. So let's just say X field. This is going to be a month. This is the name of the field that I have on the backend. Right now, I'm just going to say Y field. Since I only have one, I'm going to type it like this. Streamify. And as you can see, I have the chart working. So add a second chart on the right. So how do we do this? Okay, first, since we're gonna have two different values for the Y field, we have to put it inside an array, kind of like this. So what I'm gonna be showing is Streamify, and let's show another app, which is Tax Master. So I'm just gonna add also a titles array, and here I'm just gonna add the same values. As you can see, we have both charts there, one over the other, because by default they are stacked. If I don't want them stacked, I can just go inside my series and say stacked false. And as you can see, now it looks like this. So let's go in and add a few more things. I'm just going to copy and paste from a different example so that I go through it a little bit faster. I'm going to add a gap width between each chart. I'm going to change the colors so that it looks a little bit better. And I am also going to add a plugin to add a listener there. This is adding the chart item event, and the actual listener that I'm gonna use, it's the item click listener. Item click function. It's gonna receive the series and the item we clicked on. It's gonna say Ext message alert. And just as an example, I'm just gonna say details and just let's say hello. Before we go and test its listeners, if I click on a bar over there, I can see that I'm receiving the series and the item. As you can see here, I can check the item field, and I can also get from the record all the data that I need. So what I'm doing is I'm displaying this message item, and I'm calling item field. Then since this is HTML, I'm adding a line break month. I'm getting item record and loading the month, and then another line break value item record get item field, which is gonna get the corresponding value. If I click there, I'm seeing Taskmaster during the month of February and 33,000. Let's click on this one. Same month, Streamify, but 9,400. Okay, now that we have seen two basic charts, the next part is to actually take a look at layouts. We have quite a few here with Ext JS. However, I'm just gonna be using the HBox and VBox layouts to set everything up. So when we take a look at this dashboard, you're gonna see that I have three main rows. That's 1, 2, and 3. And the first one is divided into 4 columns. The second one is 2 columns, and the third one is 2 columns. Also, if we wanted to, we could have using the border or the anchor layouts. Those two are quite powerful, but right now I wanted to use the two most simple ones. So if I go into our kitchen sinks and just look at the layout, if I use the border one, we could have done something like this where we could show and hide. Or if we use the absolute one, we could have placed anything where we wanted to. We could also have used the table layout or column or anything we wanted to. But right now, like I said, I'm gonna be using the HBox to add columns and the VBox to add rows. And there's also an anchor layout, which is not listed here, that allows you to place all the sub-panels in a more specific way. Also, before we go to the dashboard, we're gonna see these charts. So we're gonna create some gauge, and the way we do it, it's we can use the actual chart with that same name, or we can use the UX component for that same thing. So I was basically using the UX tool. So while I'm gonna show you the two of them inside our example, the actual dashboard is gonna be using just the UX example. Notice that both of them can have a needle there. This one looks a little bit more modern than the other one. However, you can use what works best for you. Okay, now let's see how to make a layout work. I have also created the layout file. Basically, what it's doing, it's also extending from a panel. I'm giving it a name. I have a store where I'm gonna load some of the data. Some other one I'm just gonna hardcode it for now. And I have created 3 different panels. Notice that for the width of each panel I have a flex value. So right now they all measure 1 unit. We go in and see it in action. This is what I have. I don't have any charts actually in it. I just have 3 different columns there. So let's go in and let's go create these charts so that you can see the gauges working. So the first one, I'm just gonna create a basic one. So it's not gonna be a panel. It's actually going to be a gauge, and it's gonna give it a title. Actually, I'm gonna take out the title, and I'm just gonna give it some values. So value, let's say that it's I don't know, 55. Let's give it a max value of I don't know, 100. And if we wanted to, we could also give it a min value. Okay, and that's all we need. I'm gonna add a few more options, but let me show you how that one looks. You can see this is how it looks right now. So basically, it has the value right in the middle, and it has the actual chart around it. If we want more detail, we want to change this a little bit, I can add a needle and I can also change the color. So that's what I'm gonna be doing right now. Let's put it actually over here. So I have a needle, and I'm giving the container a color. It could be whatever we want. Let's just say that I'm gonna say it's green for now. There it is. Okay. Uh, we can do it several other ways. Right now, this is how I'm gonna leave it for now. Now we want to create it as a chart. UX type. I'm gonna create a different one. This time it's gonna be a polar, and it's gonna have a few options here. So just to be fast, since we have done this before, I'm just gonna do it this way. I have to specify in this case some axis. It's gonna be numeric. The position is gonna come from a gauge. I'm gonna give it a maximum value. I'm gonna put some steps on it. Then I have to specify the series. Same deal. Now it's not a pi or a radar. It's just a gauge. And I also have an angle field, and I'm specifying the colors here. I'm also saying that I'm gonna add a needle, and the donut is gonna be the thickness of that chart. And I'm gonna add the store. The store that I'm using here is not as straightforward as the other one. Why? Because I'm sending some parameters to the backend. So here I can specify if I want warm, hot, or closed deals. And it's gonna return a different value depending on those params. So here I'm just saying hot, and this is gonna get sent to the backend. A comma there. We take a look at that specific store, this one, and what it's doing is those parameters that I send right before the store is loaded, it's gonna send them to the extra params inside the proxy property, which that means they are gonna be sent to the backend to be processed. And once we return, which is this load listener, it's gonna get the values, and it's gonna change uh, the the gauge. But this is used on a different example, not on this one. That's why I have this if statement here. Right now it says only if it's different than null, and as you can see here, it is null, so I can ignore that for now. And now the last one, it's what if I don't want an actual gauge? What if I want a donut? So in that case, it's quite straightforward. So instead of X-type panel, I'm just gonna call it polar. And here I'm just gonna hard code it in this example. So I'm just gonna say store. I have this field, and I have all three options: closed, warm, hot, and I have different values. And I also have the series. And the series I'm also going to just copy and paste. We don't have much time, so I have to do it this way. And it's also type pi. We have an angle field, we have a label field, and I have three colors: one for closed, one for warm, and the other one for hot. Gonna save. Also the donut, it's gonna give that thickness just like the other example. Let's refresh and we take a look at it. Now we have these three different examples. Okay, I hope this gives you quite an idea of what we can do. Now, if we want to build this, it's a little bit more complex, but let's take a look at how I did it. So basically, what I have, it's a main file, which is called home. In it, I have several options. I require several files. These files that you're seeing here, these 5 files, correspond to each block inside my dashboard. So I'm encapsulating everything into different files to make it easier to work on and maintain. I also, and this is where I specify the layout that we were talking about before. So I'm specifying a VBox, which is basically a vertical layout that contains horizontal items. The pack start and the line stretch makes sure the pack start and the align stretch makes sure that everything fits from side to side. I added a body style with a background color of a light gray. I added some margin. This defaults property that you see here, what it's gonna do is that it's gonna put that margin inside of all the child items. So that gray color that I was mentioning, it's this color that it's outside. And as you can see, the first item is the KPI panel, which corresponds to this. Then it's the panel that contains the software ratings and the sales charts. So these two. And the third one, it's also a panel that contains the sales representative sales and the downloads chart. And what else is here? Well, as you can see, I specified a flex value of 2, 3, and 3. So imagine your screen being divided into 8 rows. The first panel measures 2, the second one 3, and the last one 3. That's why the top one is a little bit shorter than the other two. Anyways, what else? We have also a layout. It's quite similar. The only difference is that it's an H box instead of a B box. And what that is doing, it's aligning this panel to the left and this one to the right. And that's basically it. That's what's happening inside that home file. Now what we have to do is go in and check each one of the other files. I'm gonna go first into the ratings chart. This one, it's a radar chart. So basically it has 3 different series, one for the max grade, one for the average, and one for the minimum. So let me show you how that is working over here. You're gonna see a bunch of extra things here. Don't get confused. It's a lot easier than it looks. I'm gonna actually take these two out. So it's the same idea. As you can see, I have a chart. Actually, I have a panel. And inside of that panel, I have a polar chart. It has a store, same idea. It has a legend, which I docked to the right. It has an inset padding. It has some interactions. It has some colors. It has axes. So it's basically the same idea of what we talked about. And however, well, this axis, it has a position radial and it has different values from 0 to 5. That's because I am using ratings from 0 to 5. And then we have some series. So basically here, I'm doing the same thing 3 times inside the series. The first one, it's a radar. It has a title of min, has an angle field, it has a radius field, it has a style for the line, it has a marker, and it has a tooltip. So everything you're seeing here, we already talked about in a different example. So it's basically the same idea. Right now, I took the other options out. So if I refresh, you're just gonna see one value here. There it is, the minimum value. So what I took out, it's the average one, and that's all I changed, where the radius field comes from, the title, and the tooltip. And same deal for the max value. The 3 colors are over here, outside the series. So as you can see, here I have all three. Okay, I think it's quite pretty straightforward. Um, the the second chart over here, the top selling software, it's quite similar to the actual bar chart. However, it's using an area chart. So let's see how that one works. So that's the sales chart. Take a look at it. Quite similar. Extends sales chart requires a few options. Actually, there's midnight I'm not using. This is the title. It's using a fit layout so that everything fits inside this panel. It is a Cartesian. I have the same reference. It's calling its own store. It has some inset padding. I specified each value separately, but since it's the same value, I can just say 20. I have the legend on the right. I also have some axes. You can see it's the same idea. However, what I added here is that I rotated the label. So instead of just having the text straight horizontally, it's slanted on a 45-degree angle. So that's what I'm doing here. I created some colors. This time I didn't want to use a theme, so I specified actually 12 different shades of green. This series, it's type area. The X field comes from month, and the title and the Y field come from these fields over here. So the title it's actually strings, and those are the texts that are gonna be shown over here in the legend. The Y field it's actually the name of the field from the backend. In this example, they match. It's the same name, but could have been something like that. I'm saying that they are stacked. If I do not say that, some area charts will be behind the others. I'm also adding a label, which I don't think it's being used, so I can take that one out. And I'm also not using the highlight. So let's save. Let's take a look at it. As you can see, it's this one. Quite simple. By default, if I have the legend, I can hide whatever I want. Okay. It's quite simple and similar to the bar chart. Actually, it changes a little bit. If I go and check the downloads chart, as you can see here, they have pretty much everything the same. Type X field, title Y field. Type X field, title Y field. Okay, so it's quite similar. Basically, what changes it's the type of series. I'm not gonna go through the downloads one because we already looked into a similar one. And inside the sales representative chart, I'm just gonna show you the buttons that I created because everything else we have already seen over here. So I'm gonna start with the first option here. This is a combo box, and I am loading the options of the combo box from the backend. When a user selects an option, I am asking Ext JS to reload the chart with those values. I'm doing everything in the front end. It's loading the data at the beginning from the back end, but once I change it, it only does it from the back end, from the front end. And show all brings everything back. So let's take a look at those two, and then we will take a look at this last one. So to create a toolbar, what we use it's this property over here, either B bar or T bar. T bar for top bar, and V bar for bottom bar. So you can have this toolbar at the bottom or at the top. And it's an array. The first item that I have there, it's a combo box. It has a store. This is where those options come from. I'm saying that this display name, it comes from the name field, and the value comes from the ID field. And then if nothing is selected, I'm just showing this text, select one. I'm forcing a selection, and I'm saying that it's not editable. By default, combo boxes in Ext.js can be edited, which means I can enter some different value. Since I only have 3, I'm asking the user to always select do not type. And then I am adding a listener. Listener is an event. I'm checking for the change event. When this one gets called, meaning when I change the value, what I'm gonna do is grab the chart, clear the filter store, and add the new one. So how do I get the actual chart? I use Ext get component and the name of the component. However, take a look at it. This component name comes from the ID. We could also use the item ID, but that works a little bit different. In this example, I did it just with ID. Be careful when you do this. I cannot repeat this ID name anywhere else in my application because it will get confused. That's the difference, the main difference with item ID. In that case, I can repeat names because they are local names. However, ID will be a global name. So I get that chart, I get its store, I clear the filter if and only if the group ID is greater than 0. This is because in a previous version I had show all over here and it had the value of 0. And then I add the new filter. This filter, I'm saying that the group ID contains the value that comes from over here, which is the ID value of the combo box. Then I have a button that it's called show all. Here I get the same chart and all I do is clear the filters. So those two things, once again, what they do is this one clears the filter and puts the new one, and this one just clears the filters. And what about this button? Well, this is a maximize button. I could have done this some other way, but what I'm doing here is that I am cloning the chart. So when I press this button, I create the window, clone this chart, and put it here. It's loading the original values. That's why you see it that it's not in the exact same position. I could have also just created a new chart, or maybe show the grid, or do something completely different. This example, all I'm doing, like I said, is cloning. So how does that work? Well, first, as you can see, I have this little arrow here. This is a string of an arrow. That's telling it that the button is not on the left. It has to be on the right side. So that's why it gets pushed all the way over there. This time it is a button. It doesn't have text, but it has an icon, which is the expand button. And then it has a handler. This handler, what I'm doing is I am getting the panel. Okay. I'm doing it this different way just to show it to you, because I could have also used the ID, just like I did before. But I'm getting the panel. This up panel is gonna get the first panel up in the object tree, meaning if I am here, it's gonna look for this panel over here. And then I'm gonna go down to get the polar item, which is this one. And I'm just gonna clone the config. This is what it's creating, the new clone of the original chart. So I'm gonna create the new window. I'm gonna add the title. I'm gonna say that it's a model, give it some size. It's a fit layout. and inside the items, I only have that chart. Once this is created, I'm gonna show that window. Okay. If we take a look at it, once again, when I click on this button, it's just gonna duplicate and create it. And like I said, if we want something a little bit more simple, we could have just done this. Okay, it's the same idea. It cloned the item over there. Okay, the only other thing that we are looking at there is that we have also a tooltip. We talked about those a little while ago. It's the same thing. However, I spent a lot more time creating a more detailed tooltip. So I show the name and show the month, the USD, and the quantity sold by that sales representative. Okay. I'm not gonna go in and explain this. This is HTML, and what I'm doing is only creating a string, and at the end, I'm just sending that string inside that tooltip. Okay, we're pretty much done. We're missing one more thing, and that's the KPI class. So the KPI class also has an HBox layout. However, here we're showing the hot leads, then we're showing the warm leads, and then the closed leads, and at the end we're showing the leaderboard. And the leaderboard, it's a separate class. The other three, I left them inside the KPI. And this KPI, as you can see here, the same idea that of what we did before. It has an item ID to reference it. Let's start with this one. Then we have the items. It's the gauge. It has a style, a color. Starts with a value of 0. Then we have some listeners. Here what I'm doing is before it renders it, because this kind of gauge does not have a store, what I'm doing is before it renders, I create the store. I send the type of KPI. In this case, I do send it the actual gauge here. And when this store loads, like I was telling you about a few minutes ago, it's gonna check that gauge variable. It's gonna say that it's different than null, and what it's gonna do is set the max value, set the value, and set the text template. In this case, it's changing everything to say hot leads, and then the actual value, as you can see here. Because if you remember the other example that I showed you, it had a percentage by default. So we can actually put here something different. And the grid on the right side, it's being loaded from the KPI view here. It's called leaderboard, and this is just a basic grid. So I just have a grid that extends from grid panel. It has a store. It fits the whole window, and it has its own columns. If you have created grids before, I did the same thing. So basically, it has a column that is called ID. The data index is the name of the field from the backend. This is the width, or flex if you want to use flex. The leads is the amount of leads it has obtained in the last month, and the rating, it's the rating for the actual sales representative. And what I'm doing here is I'm just adding some stars. I'm using just a basic star icon. Basically, if it has 2 stars, it's gonna put 2 yellow stars, and then the other ones are gonna be just gray. So as you can see here, these are yellow, and one a gray one, and same deal on the other one. These are random values, so this is not real. The rating, I mean. So this is it. It's been a lot. We have just a few minutes for questions and answers. I hope you enjoyed the whole thing. If we don't get to answer your questions, feel free to contact me later or to contact any of us. We're gonna put this video on YouTube as soon as possible, so you can go in and take a look at it in your own time. And well, once again, I want to thank everybody. Let's move on to the question and answers.
Thank you, everybody. We're back to the question and answer section of this presentation. Um, if you have any questions, please leave them in the question panel here in the webinar. We have a couple of questions by now. Let's see. Cameron asks us if the sample project will be available. Yeah, what I will be doing after we post it in YouTube, I will put a link there to the GitHub account where I'm gonna publish this code. I will be putting there the SQL to create the database as I had it. I will put also the backend, and I will put the front end there. However, take in mind that the SDK for Ext JS is not going to be there. You need to either have a license or use a trial to actually test it out. But if you want to take a look at it, you can look at the code on GitHub. Okay, William. Thank you for your comments. I don't see any more questions. Do you guys have one more or a couple? What we try to do here is show you different types of charts. We didn't go through all of them. Like I said at the beginning, we have financial charts. We have some other kinds that you can use. Also, you can build your own components. So I created a few KPI components by using the UX gauge. However, you could go in and create something. I have sometimes created my own KPI display, which is basically just a bar chart and some numbers. So that's one of the great advantages of XJS. You can create whatever you want, and you can place pretty much any object inside any other object. So maybe for a future webinar, we can do just that and show you how to build it. But for now, this is it. I really appreciate the time from everyone. If you have any questions, I didn't put my email here, but it's andres.vilalba@sencha.com, just like my name and last name. So feel free to contact me. I didn't do a 3D chart because we didn't have enough time. Peter is asking me that. However, it's quite similar. If you want to check that out, you can go into our kitchen sink. Remember that I showed you the link before? It's over here. Just go into our kitchen sink, and from there, you can just look at the 3D charts. It's basically what changes there. It's how you're gonna display the series. So you need the numeric ID and the category 3D and bar 3D. Apart from that, it's the same thing we just did. So Peter, if you're interested, please go ahead and check it there or send me an email. Once again, thank you. I hope we see you soon in another webinar, and have a great day, everybody.